You may be seated. Okay, this is Unit 4. How the values, principles, and bodies of the Constitution shape American institutions and practices. I am the chair of this panel. My name is David Clark. I am bar counsel for the State Bar of Nevada. I'll have my colleagues on the panel introduce themselves, starting on my right.
My name is Victoria Coolbaugh. I'm the Executive Director and Lobbyist for the Nevada Justice Association.
Hey, my name is Dr. Precious Hall. I'm a professor of political science at TNCC.
Good morning. My name is Andrew Langfelder. I'm a regional representative with U.S. Senator Dean Heller.
And your question is question number 1. Evaluate the argument in Federalist 62 that the United States needs both a House of Representatives and a Senate because single large assemblies have the propensity to yield to the impulse of sudden violent passions and be seduced by factious leaders into intemperate, pernicious resolutions. In addition, why do you think the Constitution provides that all bills for raising revenues shall originate in the House of Representatives, and that the House shall have the sole power of impeachment? In addition, in your opinion, has the Senate properly used, or has it abused, its power to review treaties and confirm nominations? What evidence can you offer to support your position? You may begin.
American satirist Will Rogers once said that ancient Rome declined because it had a Senate. Now what's going to happen to us with both the House and the Senate? The Philadelphia Convention of 1787 established both equal and proportional representation to satisfy the fears between the large and small states.
The Founding Fathers studied the failures of ancient governments and merged ideals of John Locke's legislation supremacy, Baron de Montesquieu's view of divided government, and the successive state legislatures such as Virginia, Maryland, and New Jersey to create the national legislature we've adopted today.
In Nevada, we have a bicameral legislature that meets every other year for 120-day sessions. This furthers the argument in Publius 62 and prevents our state legislature from yielding to sudden violent passions and encourages legislators to overcome partisan gridlock to legislate more efficiently. Since the ratification of the 1934 unicameral amendment to their state constitution, the state of Nebraska has increased the number of bills passed.
Despite the successes of Nebraska, we agree with Publius in Federal 62 that we need a bicameral legislature. Madison goes even further to say that no law or resolution can now be passed without the concurrence first of a majority of the people and then a majority of the states.
The bipartisan 2013 Immigration Modernization Act have been passed by the Senate, but the House disagrees with certain parts of the act that would affect congressional districts on the border. The framers saw the unicameral Congress under the Articles of Confederation as a failure because large states were not truly represented. As a result, both the House and the Senate were given specific powers to ensure representation and sufficient checks.
Federalist 63 states, the people can never willfully betray their own interests, but may be betrayed by the representatives of the people, and need the concurrence of separate and dissimilar bodies for every public act. Under Article 1, Section 7, all bills raising revenue must originate from the House, because at the time, the founders were concerned that the senators would require more wealth than representatives, and the large number of representatives would be a better way to gauge public support. The Senate still retains sovereignty to amend revenue bills that originate in the House, giving this branch a powerful overriding check on the House, as seen with the current Joint Committee on Taxation.
The House of Representatives can also start the impeachment process for offices in government under Article 1, Section 3. In 2009, the House impeached District Judge Samuel B. Kent and Judge Thomas Portis. The Senate holds the impeachment trial, holds committee hearings, and has a final say in the trial.
With 68 executive levels and 90 judicial vacancies, the Senate invoked the nuclear option to limit the 60 votes needed for approval, expediting the process over partisan obstruction. This rule change under Article 1, Section 5 has deprived the minority party leverage to prevent controversial nominations. The nuclear option has led to the approval of Kai Feldblum as Commissioner for the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission, which has been vacant for over 2 years, preventing the EEOC from executing their obligations. The case of Biden v. Common Cause is challenging the 60 votes needed to cloture debate, violating the idea of a simple majority to pass most legislation outside constitutional requirements.
The Senate has properly used its power to review treaties, as can be seen with the 2010 New Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, a nuclear arms treaty between the U.S. and the Russian Federation. In 2005, Congress approved of the Dominican Republic Central America Free Trade Agreement, a free trade agreement among Central American countries, the U.S., and the Dominican Republic.
However, we do feel that the Senate has been underusing its power of advice and consent over treaties. The Senate's authority over foreign affairs has been greatly altered over the past 60 years. As Arthur Schlesinger wrote, every president reconstructs a presidency to meet his own psychological needs. As seen by President Obama's executive agreement with Iran over the nuclear reduction deal in the face of increased senatorial sanctions. Thank you.
Thank you. Start with you.
Sure. My question where we're going to start is that we've seen over the last few years since the 1990s that the number of seats in both houses, in the House and the Senate, have become markedly less competitive. Should that lack of competition cause us concern, and if so, why?
I don't think it should cause us concern. For example, Harry Reid, who's been the majority leader for the state of Nevada for so long, he's built up this influence to the point where since he is the majority leader, he is able to more or less advocate for bills that could bring back pork or additional revenue for the state of Nevada. As you can see with the recent farm bill, Harry Reid as well as Dean Heller put in payment lieu taxes, which would help the state of Nevada because we are owned by federal land. Essentially what it helps Nevada because it helps pay back lost revenue because of federally owned land. So it is good that we have a less market competition because these senators have such high influence and can benefit the state of Nevada.
If we did have more competitive seats, it would push the representatives or senators to really push legislation through that would represent their constituents better. Because if they had a competitive election cycle, they would always have to answer to their voters. And if they didn't have a chance, if there were less competitive seats, they can do what they want in Congress because they don't have to answer to the voters.
Members of the House are elected for 2-year terms. Do the advantages outweigh the disadvantages of these term limits, and why? And if I may ask you to also address the 6-year term limits with the Senate.
Well, first the Senate starts in 6-year terms because they're supposed to be the older and more wiser branch of Congress because they have to be 30 to serve. Well, in the House of Representatives, you have to be 25 to serve. And the reason why it's a 2-year term limit is because they thought that they wanted to pass legislation fastly and have the Senate check it.
And Federalist 57 previously stated that biannual elections remind members of their dependence on the people. And I think that they should increase the House's term years to a higher, to maybe 6 years like the Senate, because the House are constantly working for their constituents more than actually concentrating on what the government actually needs, because they constantly need to focus on getting reelected.
Going off of what Emily said, I do believe the 2-year term for the House is too short, just because if the 2-year term is so speedy and not very extensive, I believe their election cycles become more important than the issues at hand. So if we would change it to maybe 3 or 4 years, not quite as extensive and long as the Senate, but I believe a 3 or 4 year term would actually serve the issues and would be a better focus on legislation rather than the elections.
When you look at the British parliamentary system, members in the House of Commons serve in Parliament for 5 to 7 years compared to our representatives for two years, as well as in the House of Lords where they're just a blood-appointed body because they have heritage. So the Founding Fathers were influenced by Parliament in itself to create 2 distinct legislative bodies. One, the House of Representatives to represent the People's Branch, and the Senate to more or less act as this Augustus body and take in consideration and fully analyze treaties, appointments, and nominations and truly check the president, which is why they serve for 6 terms, or 6-year terms.
Currently, public satisfaction with Congress is low. Why? And what do you think could and or should be done to restore its standing in the public eye?
The issue that lies with Congress's approval rating is that Congress as a whole has such a low approval rating of 8%, but individual congressmen within the states have much higher approval ratings because people appreciate that they're from their state and that they're working towards the common good of the state that they're from. So I don't think that the issue is with the congressmen necessarily, but rather that people don't understand how Congress works, so they feel that if things aren't getting completed in a very timely manner, that it's not functioning properly.
Another reason why some congressmen have low approval ratings is insider trading, which is also called honest graft, which was discovered by the Hoover Institute at Stanford. Not all of them are doing it, but there's a possibility for it. And a major reform put on it was the Stock Act, and that act should have gone deeper and put more transparency into their bank accounts and financial statements.
Representative Don Gingell said the American people will get a better government on Monkey Island at the local zoo than we're giving them today. And I think one of the main reasons for this is just the constant bipartisan struggles within the House and the Senate. I just think that there's constant bipartisanship, and they need to fix that to result in more compromise if they want to get their approval ratings up.
Going off of what Emily said, I also believe the American public focuses more on the negatives of Congress, but don't actually recognize the positives. For example, the Violence Against Women Act was just passed, which contributed over $650 million to strengthen our justice court systems, as well as the 2013 renewal focus was on reducing sexual assault on college campuses. So I believe it's not necessarily, or shouldn't necessarily be low Congress approval rating, but the negative focus is more inclined to be only on what Congress is doing wrong rather than on the bills that they have passed to actually better the American public.
To expand off Brenna's point about the transparency of government right now and how many individuals aren't aware of what's going on, I would advocate that we move on to a British parliamentary system where the Prime Minister gets questions monthly by members of Congress. So we can have our congressmen or our senators be questioned by their constituents, and so they can really analyze what their constituents want, the transparency of what these representatives are doing, and thus increase the transparency of our government.
I'd like to switch focus a little bit. We talked about public dissatisfaction, reduced competitiveness of seats, and the ability of the public in the system to police and regulate the members to their own ability to do that. And the Constitution provides that each House shall be the sole judge of the election and qualification of its members. They decide who is to sit and why. How effective has this rule been used? And what evidence, historical or contemporary, can you offer to support your answer?
A couple months ago, the House of Ethics Committee did a closed-door hearing for Representative Trey Riddell, who was caught with cocaine possession. Now, after that committee hearing, and probably along with several other factors, Representative Trey Riddell said that he would not run for re-election in the next election cycle. So there you can see the House using their power to investigate and check the conduct of their representatives and influence their election cycle or not.
In the Supreme Court case Anderson v. Dunn, Correspondence Anderson was punished for contempt, but the Supreme Court analyzed the situation and realized that he had all the actual criteria to be on a committee and actually serve efficiently. So I believe the Supreme Court does an adequate job of determining the proceedings and suitability for each member.
Going off of my colleague Brooke, another way the Supreme Court has done a good job with that is in the court case Powell v. McCormick, that says that Congress cannot exclude a duly enacted member from Congress as long as they meet the standing requirements upheld.
Some critics have claimed that Congress is a difficult body to lead because since the president answers to a more national constituency and each member of Congress is representing their districts, do you think that there's an issue in terms of getting members of Congress to focus on national issues as opposed to issues that are maybe strictly within their district?
A reason why congressmen have a lack of sense for national issues and more on their districts is because they constantly are in their districts and they're constantly wanting to get reelected, and it would be better to focus on your district's interests than the national issues, because in your district people will find it, what have you done for us type of deal. And if you fill your district needs, then they will vote for you and reelect you, whereas if you just went for the national needs, you would maybe not get reelected because your constituents aren't represented.
You could also argue that that's a good thing that they're going towards more of the districts. For example, the Natural Resource Committee just passed through a bill that is giving Lyon County in the own state of Nevada over 70,000 acres of land to economic use. That's going to provide over 800 jobs in Lyon County, which has the lowest unemployment rate in our county for jobs.
I would argue that Congress hasn't only been focusing on their districts and that they have been looking at things on a national level, because as of late, especially, there has been a lot of national pressure put onto Congress, particularly from President Obama in his State of the Union address last week.
To agree with Brenna, satirist William Rogers also said that about all I can say about the U.S. Senate is that it opens with prayer and ends with an investigation. So I like the idea that corruption is usually found through Congress and through the Senate, as seen with the Benghazi situation as well.
And when you look at the theories of representation, we have two dominating theories right now. One would be the delegate theory, which I'd like to delegate to essentially vote for everything that I tell them to do, and the trustee theory, which is I vote someone and I give them the trust to do it. To take it on a smaller proportion, Jim Wheeler's office is just right around the corner. And recently, he had a recent video that was leaked of him being a delegate to his people by saying that if they want slaves, then he's going to vote for slaves. So these are the two theories that are going on right now, and I feel as though our representatives and our senators are trying to balance it out, but they're not doing a very good job.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Okay, good job. Well done. I liked your prepared comments. You balanced the large and the small, and you gave the historical development of the bicameral system and the compromise that it hoped to achieve. I like the reference to our final 120-day session. So sort of we compress it to a pressure cooker, which Schoolbach can talk about, and it makes it more efficient. Well, at least it ups the stakes and says this is what your window is. You've got to get stuff done. I like the references to the various Federalist papers, and the notation on the immigration deadlock, the number of vacancies is a segue to the nuclear option. I thought your prepared remarks were well done. I like the responses to the follow-up questions. You guys were comfortable with going out there and saying, look, we think 2 years is too short, 3 to 4 years is better. I like the interplay with delegate versus trustee. I'd like to see a little more. I don't know. Actually, no, I take that back. That was good. Overall, I thought you did a fine job of being responsive and picking up our questions and providing answers. So well done.
Great participation by the whole panel. I didn't notice that anybody was more particularly strong in one area or the other. I thought you guys were really well balanced. We showed a great depth of knowledge from all of you, so I really like that. I really like some of your more current examples, non-traditional pieces of legislation like the EEOC, an example that most people don't know, so it's obvious that you guys have really put a lot of work into this, so very, very well done.
I would agree. I like that you demonstrated that you had a breadth of knowledge, so using not just Federalist 62, but Federalist 1 and the different Federalist papers. I also like the fact that you pulled in court cases, because on face value, this question might not seem like it will require any sort of court knowledge, but you use court cases and use them appropriately, showing that you had a breadth of knowledge, which I think was very good.
I'd agree. I think you guys really showed the depth of knowledge that you have. From citing the payment in lieu of taxes, the most recent issue that was cited, to the Dominican Republic treaty that was cited. There were quite a few examples in there that aren't your most common references that you see in with regards to this subject. You really did the most important thing really well, and that's address the question and all aspects of the question, and explain the response thoroughly, and as well as cite examples. And so you did a very good job. Good work.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you.